It's our joy to introduce the next speaker. Colonel Brian Rees is a medical doctor. Dr. Brian Rees received his medical degree a master's degree at the Public Health from Norwich University in the USA, and is a board-certified family physician. He has researched and written about the application of the Vedic technologies of consciousness, Transcendental Meditation, for the promotion of soldiers' resilience, resolution of post-traumatic syndromes, and reduction of violent conflicts. Recently, he's also leading author of 2 studies published in the Press Review Journal on the reduction of post-traumatic syndrome in Congolese people through Transcendental Meditation, Congolese refugees. Dr. Rees is from the U.S. Army Reserve College, where he has been serving more than 37 years. Please welcome Dr. Colonel Rees.
Thank you. Good morning. Your Holiness, Shankaracharya-ji, Maharaja, honored guests, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on the applications of Vedic science in the military. The main points we'll be talking about: different meditations do different things. TM, Transcendental Meditation, can be applied for soldier resilience and for performance. We'll go over some of the experience at Norwich University. Meditation also is applicable for post-traumatic stress. We'll talk a little bit about the Vedic tradition for producing enlightened warriors and some of the Maharishi effect. It's probably apocryphal, but the story behind this picture is that this tiger had a couple of tiger cubs, but they didn't survive. And she became tiger depressed and was not eating, and the zookeepers thought that she was going to die. So they thought they'll take some suckling pigs and put some tiger outfits on them and put them in with Mama Tiger, and what could go wrong? The worst case scenario would be that she gets her appetite back. So we'll come back to Mama Tiger in just a couple of minutes. Louder. So the pioneering research that Dr. Keith Wallace presented yesterday led to an hypothesis that all meditation is the same. For brevity's purposes, research does not support that hypothesis, but it begs the question: do the differences among different techniques, are they significant? Do they matter? And if they do matter, as far as the military is concerned, what technique should be introduced or available to a treatment-naive population such as the military? I don't know if Fred Travis is here, but this quote is from him. He will be discussing brain patterns and their manifestations in meditation later today. This slide we saw yesterday, I think. Again, meditations are different. The procedures are different, so it's no surprise that the outcomes and brain waves are different. Neuroimaging studies are different, and I'll leave this to Fred to talk about. Suffice to say that different meditations do different things in the body and mind and the brain. They're distinguishable one from the other. But again, the question is, do these differences matter? Clearly a tiger, or rather a pig, is not a tiger. But as far as Mama Tiger is concerned, these pigs were close enough. She was happy with these pigs. But we could envision a scenario where something is very similar to something else, but it differs in some key respect. And so you can be attracted to something and anticipate some certain outcome, but then when you get there, you find out that the outcome is not what you expected. So there are a couple of things to learn from this slide. One is, this is a demonstration of focused attention. If you look at this little fellow's face, you can see the gamma waves are making his hair stand up. And the other lesson is that men are fickle. I think the women probably know that in this audience, and it starts at a very young age. I'm sorry, that's just the way we are. This information about the conclusions from the American Heart Association was presented yesterday. Again, suffice to say that Transcendental Meditation was found to be effective and is being recommended for treatment for hypertension in the United States. Other meditations were not found. So we're talking about Transcendental Meditation as taught by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Mental technique, easy to learn in a week. It's important for the military. They want something that is not going to take up too much training time or time from their daily activities. The results need to be prompt. You can't tell a soldier that he's going to do this for 20 years and then something good will happen. It needs to be effortless to perform. The American military particularly is not going to tolerate anything that is too philosophical or religious in nature. It doesn't require any change in belief or lifestyle except for the fact that you do have to have the time and take the time to practice the meditation on a regular basis. Due to the epidemic of post-traumatic stress and suicides, the U.S. Army recognized that there's a need for promotion of comprehensive soldier fitness, promotion of resilience. I invited myself into that activity at the Pentagon, and this paper resulted. We looked at over 33 different modalities of stress management, relaxation, meditation, screened over 11,000 articles, and came to the conclusion that you see here, that Transcendental Meditation, mindfulness, less so, progressive muscle relaxation, could conceivably be recommended. And the recommendation was that this be integrated into training. It has been, and I'm going to go over some of the findings at Norwich University. You may be familiar with West Point or Annapolis, the military academies in the United States, but there are also private military academies, and the oldest of these is Norwich University. It's 195 years old. I know to a country like India, 195 years may not seem like very much, but for the United States, 1819 was a very, very long time ago. So this study was 2 years long. It involved 60 freshmen, incoming freshmen. They were randomized into either immediate training in Transcendental Meditation or a 6-month delay. And I'll just go through the findings that Dr. Carol Bandy and her group came up with. Over the course of those months, time is on the horizontal axis. It goes up to 6 months. The TM group is in red. The control group is in blue. Resilience increased. Constructive thinking increased. Attentiveness increased. Perceived stress decreased. Depression decreased. Mood disturbance decreased. State anxiety decreased. Hypervigilance decreased. So this is not surprising. It replicates a lot of the findings that we've seen previously in a number of studies, and it happened quite quickly. And overall, it demonstrated that resilience in these cadets was increased. It's the first time it had been studied in an exclusively military population. These are some quotes from some of the participants. President Schneider, no relation to Robert, I don't think, who's the president of the university, stated that 20 years from now, all colleges will give their students TM. Norwich will have been the first. Also, there are a number of participants at the university who are veterans themselves. They were enlisted, and some had post-traumatic stress. And this one veteran commented that that had resolved. So soldier performance increases. It is pointed out by general officers in the Army that however you feel, you still have to accomplish the mission. We'd like you to feel good about it, but if you don't, it doesn't matter. You still have to do the job. And there's a lot of data, not so much in military populations, but there's a lot of data that supports the improvement of job performance. Also, and ever more important, is the effect of Transcendental Meditation on moral maturity. If you think back to this last decade and a half of war that the United States has been involved with, and you think of what has gone wrong, one of the first things that comes to mind is Abu Ghraib, which is a very small thing, but it's a manifestation of moral immaturity, and particularly these days with the CNN effect, which has to do with the ubiquity of cameras and the 24-hour news cycle. Some indiscretion, such as was performed by then, and then the added stupidity of taking pictures, has an effect which is completely disproportional to the event itself. And then also addressing post-traumatic stress, so we'll touch on that next. There's plenty to be stressed about in a theater of operations. You have to wear all this stuff, body armor and ammunition and weapons. It's heavy, it's hot, there are civilians on the battlefield. There are little spiders that want to climb into your sleeping bag with you at night. If it's not too hot, then it's too cold and you want to go take a shower and the snow is knocked down to your shower point so you smell bad until they get that fixed. Or you can just have a lousy job. This is a military police unit that I was assigned to in Afghanistan, and their job was guarding detainees, which is generally thought to be the most thankless of activities. This is a friend of mine, John Pryor. He was when we met back in 2006, he is the chief of trauma surgery at the University of Pennsylvania, sharp guy. He was our most valuable player. He was the busiest surgeon in Iraq when we were there. We were assigned to Abu Ghraib together in 2006. We became very good friends. When he was promoted from captain to major, he asked me to pin or Velcro his rank on him, which I know means nothing to most people, but for military types it was a big deal. It was a great honor that he asked me to do that. Great family man. His wife Carmela, she's a pediatrician at the University of Pennsylvania. And one of the most stressful aspects of being in a war zone is when your friends are killed, which is what happened to John. So there were a number of awful things about Abu Ghraib. It was in the city of Abu Ghraib, which was before the Sunni awakening, was right in the Sunni triangle. It was a 360-degree hostile environment. There was a minaret and these apartment buildings which had an overlook position into our yard, and we would conduct operations outside our gate. Led to a lot of casualties, both Iraqi and American, that we would take care of in our hospital. And it gave me the opportunity, unfortunately, to see the birth of a number of cases of post-traumatic stress. This plea from Macbeth, I think he had PTSD. It's a fictional character, but it sounds like he had it. And he says, "Canst thou not minister to a mind diseased, pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with some sweet, oblivious antidote, cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart?" And then the doctor replies, "Therein the patient must minister to himself." And I think the doctor is right. Essentially, in the United States at least, we have medicalized what is essentially a moral injury. And we treat it with medications, and moral injuries don't really respond very well to pills. And the psychological interventions that are performed have some value, but generally speaking, the veterans hate them. Better than medications and the medicalization of this injury, I think, is prevention and treatment through transcending, which can be done readily in a theater of operations like this handsome fellow is doing here. There have been a number of studies that have looked at the effects of TM on post-traumatic stress. The first was of Vietnam veterans with the post-Vietnam adjustment disorder, and you can see that a number of symptoms that are associated with post-traumatic stress, alcohol, insomnia, depression, those improved compared to the psychotherapy du jour. A number of other symptoms, as you see, the bigger the blue bar is and the further the bar goes to the right, the more beneficial it was. So again, compared to psychotherapy, TM was the blue bar. It showed marked improvement. It's been studied in a pilot study in veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. And again, the symptoms were improved. The Second Congo War was a huge war. It didn't get any press in the United States because we have no strategic interest there, apparently. But millions of people were killed, millions were displaced. And colleagues and I managed to identify some of these Congolese refugees living in or around Kampala, Uganda, and we studied them with TM. I was the lead author on this study, which was more for political reasons. I don't know if Fred Travis is here, but he should have been the lead author, but I'll take it. In any case, we took 42 of these subjects, randomized them into TM or waitlist control. And I'll spend 30 seconds telling you about our instrument. The tool we used was the Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Checklist, which is a instrument that has a score that goes at the bottom from 17, which means you have no symptoms of post-traumatic stress, or a maximum score of 85, which means you have the worst possible symptoms in all of the domains related to post-traumatic stress. So our population here was quite stressed, in the high 60s. We taught them TM, and you can see that within 30 days, there was a reduction of, I think it was about 36 points. No, I'm sorry, it was 30 points, 29.9 in these first 30 days. Now, a change of 11 points is clinically significant, so this is a very, very significant change. Also, a score at 34 or below is felt to be non-symptomatic. Basically, you're not completely cured, but you're done. You're good enough. It doesn't affect your life anymore. And so we took these people who had been suffering, some for years, from post-traumatic stress with very high scores, and reduced them down into the non-symptomatic range within the first month, and they stayed there, even continuing to improve for the whole more than 4 months of the study. This is illustrated in this other slide. I compared it to mindfulness-based stress reduction because both of these studies were published at about the same time. The populations were about the same size. The length of the study was about the same, and they used the PCL as their instrument. The differences were that we used Congolese refugees. Their study was in American veterans. That will make a difference, but I don't think it will make as big a difference as you see on this slide. We then took some of our waitlist controls, and we had been following them along, and they had just been getting worse for the first 90 days, and we thought, well, we'll go ahead and teach them TM, and let's see, since we had these spectacular results with the first study, let's see how quickly we can get results in the second study. So we post-tested them at 10 days, and then again at 30 days. And at 10 days, we had this reduction that again was marked. About 2/3 of the benefit they were going to experience takes place within the first 10 days. So as it says in the Gita, a little of this dharma, a little of this evolution delivers from great fear. So it's remarkable to have these changes within the first 10 days, and then it replicated our 30-day data as well. Karl von Kloswitz is kind of the rock star of Western military thought. He's the one who gave us the fog of war, and war is an extension of policy or politics by other means. So he's famous for that, but he also identified a number of attributes of successful military leaders, including the inward eye, and also the necessity for having a strong character that will not be unbalanced by the most powerful emotions. But he didn't have much to say about how to effect this. For that, I think we need to turn to the Vedic tradition. So this information in the beginning of chapter 4 of the Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that this knowledge was given to Vivaswat, who gave it to Manu, and who gave it to his son. It was given to the Kshatriyas, to the warriors, I think for at least 2 reasons. One is that it was their job to maintain order in society, and so they needed this knowledge to do that. And second, on those occasions when order would fall and disorder would break out, it was their job to restore order, which involves combat operations. And the great contrasts that take place during combat can be unsettling and unhealthy, obviously, but particularly for those who are not settled in intellect. And so this knowledge was given to the warriors. Chapter 2, verse 45, I think, of course, is the key, as Dr. Morris had discussed earlier. Be without the 3 gunas. Leave this field of activity. Allow the mind to experience its own inner nature, which is free of duality, ever firm in purity. This is what Krishna was telling Arjuna. And then, repeating that experience time and again, established in yoga, perform action. And if you don't do this, he who is not established has no intellect, nor has he steady thought. And the absence of this technology leads to what we fear and hate most about war. War is intrinsically problematic, but generally speaking, historically, if an army came to your town, you were having a bad day. That it was not a happy event. Most armies are just basically groups of armed, hostile young men, and you really don't want them in your town. It leads to even disciplined forces. Rudyard Kipling talking about the British Army, relatively disciplined, said it's loot, loot, loot that gets the boys to get up and shoot. So crimes against property are bad enough, but crimes against persons, of course, are even worse, and of course that happens. And then also it leads to post-traumatic stress, as we've seen. So now let's move on to averting the danger, which has not yet come. Brain-based belligerency reduction, this came to me because of these Army guys who couldn't get their brains wrapped around the Maharishi effect or superradiance. It's too long a story. Sun Tzu was the Chinese classical military philosopher. He said, to win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the supreme excellence. And then from the Yoga Sutra, in the vicinity of yoga, enmity ceases. So, Maharishi effect, invincible defense technology. This is groups of persons, as Dr. Hagelin has discussed yesterday, practicing the TM City program. It can be applied to reduce hostilities in targeted populations. And the idea is that consciousness is a field. And by practicing this group practice of the TM City program, we can affect the brain chemistry, the thinking, the subsequent behavior of potential belligerents who don't even have no idea of what we're doing. And this hypothesis has been tested. So we have now this technology where we can invade a hostile neighbor, not with cruise missiles and infantry, but rather by enlivening that field which underlies the sattva of our hostile neighbor. And in so doing, we don't defeat him, but rather we have victory by enlivening these qualities in our neighbor, fulfilling desires in ways that he didn't even know existed, and creating in our enemy an invincible friend. So it is a new paradigm which should be employed promptly, and we propose certain measures to do that. First would be selecting the personnel for establishing a prevention wing in the Army of the military. Second would be training TM teachers and participants in TM. We need to ensure continuous operation so that it doesn't fall apart after some time. Establish command and control. Select sites and locations for these groups of persons practicing TM City program in groups. And enhance the Maharishi effect through Vedic infrastructure. And we should go ahead and begin that action promptly. And perhaps that can be addressed later on in this conference. So, soldiers live in this world. It's hostile. I remember leaving the gate at Kandahar. We were going to go meet with some community leaders about something, and we had our security element. And the leader who was briefing these troopers, he was telling them, remember the 3 Ps. You know, we're going outside the wire now. Remember, be polite, be professional, and be prepared to kill everyone you meet. And I thought, that's a very tall order. You know, Arjuna was confused on the battlefield. It may be an unrealistic expectation to think that a 19-year-old with an assault rifle is going to be able to perfectly balance these very disparate requirements of the carnage of a battlefield. So, a soldier experiences this, and if you tell him that the world is not a hostile place that's full of threats, that really it looks like this, a soldier looks at you and thinks that you're out of your mind. This is not what he knows. But that's because knowledge is structured in consciousness, and reality is different in different states of consciousness. And as Maharishi said, no description of a destination can replace a road that leads to it. So what soldiers need, and what we need to assure that we provide for those in the military, is a new experience. This is beyond their experience. We need to give them a new experience. And that experience is an experience of the transcendental field, which is beyond conflict, beyond opposites, beyond the volatility, the uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, beyond the terror of the modern battlefield. So this is my synopsis. The domain of meditation and stress management techniques is very heterogeneous. We have a large effect size for TM and beneficial second and third order effects. It's good for prevention of post-traumatic stress and promotion of resilience. It's good for treatment of that. It enhances the performance of our military personnel. It's consistent with warrior culture. In fact, it is the essence of what must be, what should be, and what really needs to be the essence of a warrior culture. And of course, this Maharishi effect is an underutilized strategic approach. So I was scheduled for 40 minutes. I have come in under 24 minutes. I am proud of myself. Thank you very much.